Tonight, to Keeping 'Em Honest exclusive report, CNN has learned that the nation's premier federal program tasked with putting severely disabled Americans in jobs is being investigated by the Department of Justice. Inside sources tell CNN it's one of the worst cases of fraud and mismanagement they've ever seen in a federal agency. According to our sources, more than $2 billion that's supposed to be used to provide jobs for disabled people is instead being funneled elsewhere. As a result, tax dollars earmarked for disabled workers are actually putting the disabled out of work while government contractors are raking in millions. Here's our senior investigative correspondent, Griffin.
You know where your feet are going.
Randall Love is exactly why the program exists. At the top of his career, he was diagnosed with a spinal cord tumor.
Hold on, I'm coming.
It crippled his body, but not his mind. No longer able to work at an office, he sought work from home and found it in a federal program. He will tell you the job cured him.
It gives me, if you would, a sense of being worthwhile. I get up just like everybody else in the morning, and I go to work too. I'm not disabled. That's why I say it's the cure for me.
His job in the IT industry comes through a federal program with strict rules. To get a federal contract, the government requires 75% of a company's work be performed by people who are severely disabled. According to the government, that means employees who are not capable of engaging in competitive employment. People like Randall Love, who would not otherwise be able to work. But this spring it was all taken away. And Randall Love says what happened to him and other disabled workers isn't right.
Quite honestly, it's a little bit shady to me. Very shady to me.
The company Love worked for lost its contract when the government awarded the work to a different bidder. The new company is being accused of not hiring enough severely disabled workers, according to a lawsuit. And though denying it and saying they are well within compliance, multiple sources tell CNN they believe it's just one of many companies violating the law and raking in hundreds of millions of dollars.
These are contracts that are supposed to go to employers who employ people with a disability.
Yeah, well, doing the right thing, at least in my mind, doesn't mean that you put 16 disabled people out of work. Doing the right thing also means, in my mind, that you don't replace them with people who don't have disabilities.
The problem is centered in a little-known federal program called Ability One. Along with its outsourced management group, Source America, they manage and award about $2.3 billion in federal contracts every year.
Multiple sources say these two organizations are being investigated for and accused of such wide-scale corruption. It's among the worst case of financial fraud they've ever seen in a federal program. Our sources say as many as half of the federal contracts under this disability program may be operating in violation of the law.
The majority of the individuals that were being hired were not severely disabled.
Even though you're supposed to have 75% or more of your work staff being disabled, severely disabled.
In my experience, in the Ability One contracts that I worked on, maybe 10 to 20% were truly severely disabled. They truly did not have the ability to find gainful employment elsewhere. Everybody else, they're capable of finding employment elsewhere.
This manager, who wants to remain anonymous to protect current employment, says instead of hiring severely disabled, the federal contractor making tens of millions of dollars would hire just about anyone who walked through the door, and no one bothered to check.
So you could say 100% of my employees are severely disabled.
Correct.
And none of them are.
Right.
And you'd still have this contract.
Right, because there's nobody checking.
CNN heard the same allegations from numerous sources all across the country. Source America says they conduct on-site visits, but according to their statement, Source America staff does not determine compliance. Only the U.S. Ability One Commission is authorized to do so. How does it happen? Ability One's commission is made up of presidential appointees, but it outsources the management of the program to the nonprofit agency Source America. Source America recommends and, according to our sources, virtually decides who gets the contracts, worth $2.3 billion every year. Former congressional investigator Rich Butel says it's a recipe for corruption.
The contracts are now being funneled to a very small group of 10 large companies that are getting way more than their fair share.
Butel and numerous other sources are telling CNN the staffers who are essentially handing out federal contracts at Source America are heavily influenced by top officials at the very same agency. And those officials are often connected to the businesses that get the contracts.
You have actual advisors and board members in these private organizations who are themselves business owners, and so they can award themselves potentially contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A perfect setup for waste and abuse.
No one from Source America would go on camera, but in a statement, the group flatly denies the allegations. No one involved in making award recommendations, the statement reads, is employed by an organization seeking those contracts. And Source America denies board members are even involved in the evaluation of contract bids. That's all left up to the AbilityOne Presidential Commission, whose executive director also declined an on-camera interview with CNN and even refused to respond to any specific questions, citing pending lawsuits. CNN has learned those lawsuits may be just the beginning. At least 4 separate inspectors general offices now have active investigations into the dealings of AbilityOne and Source America, and the Department of Justice has opened its own investigation.
Andrew joins us now. This is such an important investigation. It seems like it would be relatively easy to check. I mean, people are either disabled or not, right?
That's right. If they checked, Anderson, which we're hearing they really don't do. What they do is they look at the paperwork, and as long as the paperwork is okay and on file, this presidential commission seems to believe everything is okay without having any proof whatsoever.
And actual inspections, that doesn't take place?
Very rare. We're finding even when they do happen, even when violations are pointed out, those are overlooked. Take this. In the last few years, Anderson, 80 letters went out to companies. 80 letters went out to companies that basically said, hey, why aren't you hiring enough severely disabled people? Do you know, in half of those cases, the companies didn't even bother to respond. They didn't even try to explain it because, according to our sources, those companies knew nothing would happen to them. This has really gotten the advocates for the disabled up in arms. I think it's why you suddenly have all these investigative agencies looking into possible corruption and even the potential, we're told, for racketeering charges.